Welcome to the Just KNIME It Recap. If you haven't heard of Just KNIME It before, we challenge you to solve a weekly data science problem with a KNIME workflow. In the recap, I will share some of my thoughts on the problem and show some of the highlights from the community on the KNIME Forum. Last week's challenge was to analyze a survey data set on offensive language in the LGBT community across Europe. So there are responses from people of gay, lesbian, transgender, and bisexual demographics on how often they think offensive language is used by politicians in their country. So let's take a look at the challenge. As a member of a think tank, your task is to craft a report on LGBTQIA representation in political discourse. Given an EU dataset gathering responses from LGBTQIA individuals across all member states, you decide to start your work by investigating the answers to the following question. In your opinion, how widespread is offensive language about lesbian, gay, bisexual, and/or transgender people by politicians in the country where you live? Use a map to present results effectively. So before we get into the first solution by Quatari here, I want to look at the data set. So the main problem with this week's challenge is to convert this survey result into a data set that's usable for display in a dashboard. So what we see here are these different kind of groupings. We have the country code for Austria at the beginning, and then the subset here for the demographic, lesbian, gay, bisexual, etc. And then also the question. Now these answers come in percentages. So 8% answered very widespread for this question, 34% fairly, 45% fairly rare, 9% very rare. So that's kind of the data set that we're working with. And we'll look at how some of these different solutions went about creating scores for this survey result. Quatari here used a group loop to loop over these different groupings, so country and subset. So for example, United Kingdom here and transgender being one grouping. Then uses this rule engine as well to create these scores, the 4 for the top and a 1 for the bottom. A 0 was also used for these missing values when people didn't answer or said don't know. Personally, I would have left those off and filtered them out so they didn't weight things lower if there were a significant people who didn't know how to answer the question. Looping through there though, let's look at the dashboard. So we scroll down and we see all of these different bar charts representing the distribution of the responses across the different member states of the EU. Now the next solution is by TARC. TARC does this a little bit differently. We'll have to open up this component to see how that's done. But TARC generates these scores by normalizing the results here, also giving them this ranking. Let's open this one up again. And in this case, they're normalized between -1 and 1 based on how those results were answered. We see a lower score here in the western states of the European Union, and that indicates a lower portion of people answering that they see high amounts of offensive language from politicians in their country. We also have this stacked bar chart here, which is a really useful way of fitting all of this information into a smaller space, where we can see the distribution of these answers to the question, with Netherlands having a very low portion of people answering very widespread, and Lithuania down here having a very high portion. The final solution I want to show you is from Tom LJR. Tom LJR did this again a little bit differently. With a rule engine here to start. If they answered widespread at all, he gave them a 1. So kind of giving them a was it high or not. So it's kind of binary in that way. And then doing some aggregating that way. Looking at this chloropath map now, we see rankings based on those types of scoring, where we didn't really differentiate too much from fairly widespread and widespread, right? But again, we see the similar pattern here where the eastern states have these higher scores for offensive language. Okay, follow us on social media, use the hashtag JustKNIME It to share your solutions to the new challenge that comes out tomorrow. and I'll see you next week for the recap of Challenge 6. Thank you.